Margaret Tudor's marriage to King James IV of Scotland in 1503 was meant to bring an end to the old rivalry that existed between England and Scotland. Did it work? Well, that's for you to decide. If you're a lover of all things history, then don't forget to hit the follow. Let's take a look at the life of Margaret Tudor, Queen of Scots. Margaret was born on the 29th of November 1489 in Westminster Palace in London. She was the second child and eldest daughter of Queen Elizabeth of York and her husband King Henry VII of England. Margaret was named for her formidable grandmother, Margaret Beaufort, who would later be joined in the royal nursery by her younger brother Henry, Duke of York, and her sister Mary Tudor. In 1497, the English opened negotiations with the King of Scots, who, despite being nearly 30 years old, was still unmarried. The marriage was opposed by both Margaret Beaufort and Elizabeth of York, as they rightly believed that young Margaret Tudor was too young to consummate the marriage. They only had to look at Margaret Beaufort's experience at motherhood, what would happen if a woman gave birth at a very young age. The Treaty of Perpetual Peace between England and Scotland was signed in 1502 and was cemented by the marriage of Margaret Tudor, King James IV of Scotland. Margaret's arrival in Scotland was delayed first by the death of her elder brother Arthur Tudor, Prince of Wales, and then by the death of her mother the following year. Margaret arrived in Scotland in 1503 and the couple were married in Holyrood Abbey. Throughout their 10-year marriage, Margaret and James would have 6 children, however only one would survive. The child would go on to become King James V of Scotland, the father of Mary, Queen of Scots. For a dynastic marriage in the 16th century, their marriage was somewhat successful, though James was far from faithful to his wife as he had at least 6 illegitimate children. The peace treaty between England and Scotland barely survived the death of King Henry VII in 1509. By 1513, England and France were once again at war. James IV of Scotland, along with the majority of the Scottish aristocracy, killed at the Battle of Flodden Field in 1513, leaving 18-month-old James as heir to the throne. Margaret Tudor was appointed Regent of Scotland under the condition that she did not remarry. However, what remained of the Scottish aristocracy would have preferred the Duke of Albany to be regent, so he was recalled from France. In 1514, Margaret married for a second time to Archibald Douglas, 6th Earl of Angus. This was a bad move on Margaret's part. Not only did she lose the regency as well as custody of her 2 children, the marriage would also prove to be incredibly unhappy. After losing the regency, Margaret would end up fleeing to England. She gave birth to her last child, Lady Margaret Douglas. In 1518, Margaret began to seek a formal separation from her husband, who by now was living on her money with his former fiancée. Father Henry opposed the separation because Angus was pro-English. For the next decade, the regency of Scotland and custody of King James V of Scotland passed between the Duke of Albany, Margaret Tudor, and her former husband, who King James V hated. Like her brother Henry, Margaret was able to successfully secure a divorce in 1527. Despite the fact that Henry would execute 2 of his wives and divorce 2 of them, he would always view Margaret as the shame of the family because she got a divorce. And Margaret would marry again to Henry Stuart, Lord Meathven. Again, the marriage would prove to be extremely unhappy. Once James's personal rule began, Margaret's rule would be largely ceremonial. She would always be viewed by the Scots as an Englishwoman. In turn, Margaret would always favour England over Scotland. In her later years, Margaret would form a close relationship with her daughter-in-law, Marie de Guise, who passed away on the 18th of October 1541 at Methven Castle.